gas and spooky. They're all together rookie. The Addams Family. Their house is a museum where people...
Good afternoon from Mickey and from me from Castle Goring. Well, I'm not going to have any preambles. I'm going to plunge right in with my baby girl. So, DLM in Florida says, another soft interview. Hoda knows that Harry has no power to do the things he claimed he was doing for the Queen. Hoda is sophisticated enough to know it's BS, yet she doesn't call him on it. What is it with the American interviewers? Is it just a bunch of woke people sticking up for Harry and his wife? Why are these interviewees getting away with it? Well, DLM in Florida, I'll tell you what's really going on. I actually addressed this in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. There is a big difference between the way the press works in Britain and the way it works in the United States. In America, in fact, most publications are cut and paste merchants. The PR companies send out things and they cut them and paste them. So with the result that the Idaho Times and People magazine will word for word often have the same story, or if not identical, disconcertingly similar. That doesn't happen in Britain. Also, British journalists are far more incisive. They're far less respectful of celebrity and status. They are more challenging. They're not particularly challenging in the United States of America. Now, I can tell you, as somebody who has sat on both sides of the fence, that in fact, it's a pleasure being interviewed in the United States of America, whether it's by a print journalist or a media personality. Even Joan Rivers, who was supposed to be a very sharp, harsh interviewer, was actually, everything was scripted beforehand. You were asked the questions, you gave your answers, and Joan adhered absolutely religiously to the lines that had been delineated and agreed upon. That doesn't happen in Britain. In Britain, it's the absolute opposite, and sometimes rather tiresomely so. Because they all think, unless they're abusive and impertinent and challenging to the point of rudeness, that they're sucking up. Which means that often the interviews are not as good, they're not as revealing, and they're certainly not as entertaining or interesting, but they're more dramatic. Hoda is actually a typical media journalist, media presenter in the United States. Everything is agreed beforehand. And my understanding is that when Harry went off message, the interview was stopped, as it ought to have been, because it was not an aggressive interview. It was a cooperative interview, and Harry would be told, well, he would be refreshed, let's put it that way. His memory would be refreshed, and he would be reminded that the Nile isn't in Manitoba, it's in Egypt, sort of thing. So let's get back to an element of what was agreed. yes, it was a soft interview, but it was meant to be a soft interview. The Oprah interview was meant to be a soft interview, but shouldn't have been a soft interview, because Oprah was compromising her integrity as a journalist. It's entirely different if you're interviewing someone for a show that the interview is going to run 3, 5, even 10 minutes, and that you're doing an in-depth interview for an hour and a half, and you have 3 hours of footage, and in that 3 hours of footage, an hour and a half of edited material, you skate on the surface the whole time. That's unprofessional. So I hope I've made the position clear. Hoda isn't getting away with anything. She's doing her job. That's really what I'm trying to say. And if you want more challenging interviews, you have to come to England. But then you get fed up of them because nobody gets a chance to talk, because the interviewer is always talking over everybody else. Gilly Penn says, question Lady C. Whilst I appreciate the long game that the royal family have been playing, and that is all very well, as I am sure Prince Harry continues to be a much loved and worried about son and grandson. However, as our Queen, big block capitals, the subjects of the monarchy, surely it is no longer viable for us, capitals, the British and Commonwealth people, to be subjected to this soap opera from the Harkles. But what can we, big block capitals, do? I have personally written to the Prime Minister, Her Majesty the Queen, Princes Charles and William, stating my concern at this continued onslaught against the British royal family, and my sense of dread at the prospect of Harry being a Counsellor of State and in the line of succession. The potential damage that this embittered ex-royal could do if called upon to fulfill either of those positions is quite horrifying. How far would he or his wife go to realise their ambition? Your insightful opinion and advice is much appreciated. Thank you. Well, first of all, Gilly Penn, as a Counsellor of State, he really has no power. It's somebody signing documents that are obliged, that the monarch would be obliged to sign on behalf of the monarch. They can't really make any decisions, so that doesn't matter. The line of succession is trickier because it's a birthright. You don't have to be a citizen. You no longer even have to be a Protestant, because they changed the law. What you do have to be, however, is a blood relation, legitimate. And once you are acknowledged to be that, irrespective of whether you are or aren't, incidentally, you only need to be acknowledged as being legitimate. You are in the line of succession. George I was a German prince. He was the Elector of Hanover. He wasn't even a British prince until his mother, the Electress Sophia, by an act of Parliament, all of her descendants were made British princes and princesses. Until then, he wasn't even British. Theoretically, a foreigner can accede to the British throne. They've done it before. and hopefully they won't be able to do it again, but let's not hold our breath. That's where it becomes more troublesome. But there is really no way of depriving Harry of his rights of succession. They are inalienable rights. He can surrender them, but he can't be stripped of them. Sorry, that's the reality. Stephanie Redden says, I just realized that they have set up 11 to 13 businesses. They must think that we are so blind and dumb that we can't see how they're profiting from the things they claim to stand up for. Sustainable travel, Travelist, Netflix, Spotify, Archewell Production and Archewell Audio, not a charity and set up in tax-free Haven, Delaware. Children's book, Pekka Publishing. Memoir, Orinoco Publishing, LLC. Mental health, joined Better Up. It really should be better down. Building Better Communities, teamed up with Procter & Gamble. Sustainable Investing, Ethic, Cobblestone Lane, LLC. Holder of the Archewell logo, Baobab Holdings, LLC. Financial investment, Nemawashi Holdings Investment Portfolio. They are all about financial gain and it's revolting. Well, I have to tell you, I have nothing against honest labour. I do have something against what we could call tainted labour. If you are supposed to be a humanitarian and you're supposed to be dedicating your life to public service, you are not, in my opinion and the opinion of practically everybody I know, and I've been in the charity world for 50 years now, literally 50 years. My first concert that I organised was in 1972. So 50 years I was the chairman and I raised money for a fetal heart monitoring unit at the obstetrics and gynecology department at the University Hospital of the West Indies. I was 22. And I don't know anybody, whether it is in Jamaica, the United States, South America, Canada, Britain, Europe, who approves of celebrities or royals or the elite profiting from charities financially. If you are a professional fundraiser, that's a different matter. But otherwise, it is, in my opinion and the opinion of everybody I have spoken to, a total and shocking disgrace. It demeans everybody else's efforts. It cheapens, it sullies. Patricia Kelsey Evans says, Dearest Lady C, I'm so appreciative of all you do on our behalf to speak the truth about the Montecito duo. Thank you very much. I do hope your back pain is easing off. Today it's marginally better. Fingers crossed the physiotherapist will be able to get me over the hump tomorrow. But yesterday I was supposed to go to something for the 60th anniversary of Jamaica's independence, and I was bedridden and couldn't go. So it comes and goes. It comes and goes. So to resume the question, it appears to me that the Invictus Games 2022 held in the Netherlands have been blatantly used by Hollywood Harry for his own interests and business dealings by shamelessly plugging Netflix, BetterUp and Travelist. Each one of these implicates a serious conflict of interest. Serious is in huge block capitals. Is Invictus a charity or not? The mainstream media are not reporting on this, and it seems to have been swept under the carpet. What are your thoughts about the situation, please? My thoughts are it's a total disgrace. My thoughts are that yet again the mainstream media disappoints. You know, the mainstream media are very interesting. They push agendas that they regard as desirable. If something they think is going to have popular appeal, they will push it as long as it goes with their political agenda. If it doesn't, they bury it. Harry and Meghan at the moment are not as anathema in the United States as they are in Great Britain. So, under the auspices of Sunshine Sachs, they are being treated very respectfully and gently, rather more respectfully and gently than they deserve. And I suppose the reality is prostitutes don't mind other people selling their wares. They don't worry about the niceties. Although there is such a thing as a tart with a heart, but we're dealing with commercial tarts without hearts. And it's all about, it's okay as far as they're concerned, it's all about making money. And what does it matter in their contemptible view and contemptuous viewpoint what the little man and the little woman thinks? They don't care about the little people. You need to understand, if you haven't figured it out yet, that the press can be very malignant, malign, dangerous, dishonest, pushing agendas that are not in the general public's interest, but they perceive to be in their own interest. They've been doing it since they came into existence. It's no accident that Hitler became the great success he did, and that his minister of propaganda knew how to play the press the way Meghan and Harry know how to play the press, the way Sunshine Sachs knows how to play the press. These are professional propagandists. As far as they are concerned, they have a narrative to push, and they're going to push it. And who doesn't like it can lump it. That is what I think of the situation. And I think it is a disgrace. You know, when I was younger, I was naive enough to think that journalism, if it wasn't yellow journalism, had noble aspects to it. I now see, by and large, journalism doesn't have noble aspects to it, generally speaking, although in particular, in certain instances, it does. There are some wonderful journalists from the past and in the present. I just mentioned one from the past, Walter Cronkite. There are wonderful journalists who are decent, even today. They are few and far between. Most of them, I wouldn't pick up the puppy's poo with their hands. Let's put it that way. I should think that should show the degree of contempt I have for them. Snobby Sydney Sider says, their US PR strategy has been a complete disaster. They ooze let them eat cake kind of vibes. They do actually. Certainly she does. I think they're modest, in brackets with a smile, deals with Netflix and Spotify will be retired in time. Let's wait and see. You can hope. You can hope. If Spotify is not renewing the Obamas' contract, this can only spell doom for corporate welfare programs for B and C list celebs like the Duke and Duchess Harkle. I think, Snobby Sydney Sider, you have a point. I mean, Netflix is in huge trouble. You know, it flourished when the pandemic was in full force. It's lost nearly half, if not half, of its value in the last week or week and a half. That's an awful lot of value to use. Well, one good thing that will emerge from Meghan and Harry tanking as commercially driven public figures, public service to their pockets, service to mammon, is that if nobody is paying them good money, they are going to have to find another way of earning money. Now, I don't know if they're going to go down the route of Bonnie and Clyde. I wouldn't have thought they will, which means that they're going to have to start to behave themselves, because nobody is interested in buying their bad behavior. Nobody's going to be paying them for their bad behavior. Nobody's going to want to receive them unless they begin to behave well and mend fences. So there actually is hope at the end of the rainbow, that these two egotistical monsters will be reined in by failure, by the fact that they are unemployable, by the fact that nobody is going to pay them sufficiently good money for them to continue their disgusting behavior. That is actually a great positive if it happens. And it will come as a massive relief to the royal family, because they would like to find a way of resolving this crisis, because it is a crisis, constructively and without being too punitive, and where a degree of civility and normality is reintroduced into the equation. My own view is that trying to get a viper to perform like a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel is never going to work. And therefore, it doesn't behoove you to clasp it to your bosom or indeed have it in your basket of figs. Unless, of course, you want to go the way of Cleopatra. Vicky says, I could see one of the Harkles hiring someone to do an attempted kidnapping on them so they can qualify for security. Vicky, you're very funny. That is very entertaining, and you're not the first person who said something like that. And I'm going to knock it on the head because it deserves to be knocked on the head. I would hope that nobody, even in their wrong mind, would be stupid enough to go down a route like that, because Princess Anne was the subject of a genuine kidnapping attempt, and she doesn't receive round-the-clock security. So even that's not going to make them qualify. Also, why would the British provide them with round-the-clock security in Britain when they're not here? So presumably somebody would have to try, maybe a drone would have to swoop down, and or maybe a vulture, or what about an American bald-head eagle, scoop down and grab Harry by the little bit of hair that's still on the top of his head and swoop him off. Wouldn't that be? And oh my goodness, the paparazzi organised it, Meghan would say, and then realise, oh, actually, no, it was a genuine attempt. Blah, blah, blah. Farcical. The whole thing is farcical. I don't think it will ever happen. I don't think even they are dumb enough, or quite frankly, crazy enough to do something like that. But several people have brought this up repeatedly over the passage of time. And so I think now is the time to knock it firmly on the head. Even if it's tried, it can't work. There's a precedent. Princess Anne, her kidnapping attempt, and she doesn't receive round-the-clock security, as I just said. Debbie Cape says, I just want to see Harry and Meghan Markle being held accountable for something they have done to the royal family. Markle sits around harming many people and laughs at the fact she will get away with it. She is never held accountable, and we are allowing this to happen. It is indisputably wrong in every way. Why is this happening? Markle even lied in a courtroom and walked out like nothing happened, when others have gone to jail for the same thing. Explain why this always happens. Why Harry, Meghan are never held accountable for their words and actions. Well, I'm going to answer pretty seriously and comprehensively. Insofar as lying to the court was concerned, the court is used to people lying to it. If it sent every perjurer to prison, I'm afraid there wouldn't be space for thieves and murderers, because practically everybody lies, and the judiciary expect it. They call it advancing your argument. And she didn't admit to lying. Let's remember that. She said she forgot. It was a puerile misremembrance. Let's be polite about it. It didn't fool anybody. But as long as she didn't admit to lying, it's not easy to nail her for perjury. But I think you're onto something. She does display a tremendous degree of hauteur and contempt for everybody, everything, every rule, and everything except what she wants. That is what is ruining her reputation. That is what is making her fail. You know, the mere fact that you can write what you have written, and the mere fact that we can have these discussions. And the mere fact that Meghan was one half of one of the most popular couples on earth 3 years ago and is now one half of one of the most reviled couples on earth should tell you that she is being held accountable. She is being held accountable by the public. Meghan and Harry, and I've mentioned this before, are in the view of certain people who are very concerned for their welfare. Meghan and Harry, in their opinion, are mad. They're insane. They're crazy. They're mentally ill. They've admitted, by the way, to being mentally ill. They have personality problems. They have admitted it. They haven't admitted that they're insane, but their actions themselves are a form of madness. As I said before, and I'm going to say it again, they are insanity in action. But they're not so crazy and then that they can be locked up until they actually do injury physically to someone or do something that is so totally off the wall in terms of literally endangering someone's life, or they commit a serious crime. They, by law and in terms of all civilized customs, are entitled to continue to enjoy their liberty. That liberty gives them the opportunity, which they take at every turn, to create havoc. That's what people like them do. I know what I'm talking about. I wrote a book on this. My mother was like that. You know, it's not a pretty thing to live through. But if every vicious, nasty, disordered human being on earth were put into the loony bin, I'm afraid society would have pockets of freedom and rather large tranches of institutions for the institutionalized. So it's all a matter of degree. It's a fascinating human interest situation. And I think people respond to it because it is so fascinating on the human level. Because we are being given ringside seats to disorder in action. And there's no doubt that they are disordered and that they create disorder. There's also no doubt that because of his position as a member of the royal family, American corporations and American businessmen and women are exploiting him and his vulnerabilities, and may I say her vulnerabilities, because even though she's malignant and malign and really, in my opinion, a pretty dreadful human being, she also is vulnerable, because if she's saying I'm a bar of soap, and one has to have compassion for people who are seriously disordered. It's not pleasant. You're not supposed to like it. You're not supposed to like illness. You're not supposed to think, oh, it's fabulous. But you can't decree that it be shut down. Not if you are a civilized person living in a civilized society with rules and values that accord other people rights. This is where tolerance comes in. This, sadly, is where religion should come in. This is where Christianity should come in. This is where understanding and compassion, where you can hate the crime but love the criminal, should come in. I hope I've explained it. It's nuanced, yes. It's difficult, yes. But it is what it is. And there's a reason why Euripides and everybody else, Shakespeare, etc., have written tragedies about the human, about awful people doing awful things. Because that's a part of human nature and a part of humanity. And we don't need to read Euripides or see a play of Euripides. We are seeing a latter day version. We are seeing the Harry and Meghan show, which in its own way is a study in awfulness. But nobody has the right or the power to shut them down the way many people would like them to be shut down. They too have rights, and their rights must be respected, even when they don't respect ours. Clairvoyant says, 2 words. So shall we just call you clairvoyant? Lady Colin Campbell, question, 5 stars. My goodness, thank you, clairvoyant. Have you heard about the new book by Tina Brown? It is called The Palace Papers. Any chance you may read, then review the book for us. Love your show. Clairvoyant. Funny name. I have ordered it. I will read it. And I will review it. I know Tina Brown slightly. I haven't seen her for years. I have a lot of respect for Tina's brightness and ability and ambition. I will read it with interest because I suspect of what I'm hearing that every now and then she's a bit wide of the mark, which could be because she now lives in the United States and we are 2 countries divided by a common language and cultures that may appear to be similar but are sometimes radically different. And if you live in one camp long enough, you are going to, of necessity, have your viewpoint to an extent altered. And it will be interesting to see who her sources are, because I know she has a wide network, but are they all au courant? Time will tell. I'll tell you when I've read the book, but I'm looking forward to it because she's very entertaining. Catherine De Palma says, this American is not fooled by Harry and his wife's drivel. In fact, their rhetoric is stomach-turning. They are spoiled, immature, self-righteous, sanctimonious human beings. They should sit in their mansion in California, raise their kids, and learn what true class, grace, and dignity are from his brother and sister-in-law. And I've read it out because I couldn't agree more. Catherine De Palma, you have hit the nail firmly on the head. NIL says, Dear Lady C, after what those 2 did when they were in my country, Canada, I am surprised that our government is letting them come again. I wonder what Meghan will say to the police this time. You are referring back to Meghan's constant complaints to the police in Toronto that she was being hounded and harassed, and it seemed to have been by the ghosts that hound and harass Harry as well. Oh, Cressy, there's a paparazzo. Where, Harry? Behind that tree. Harry, there's no tree. Well, if there was a tree, it would be behind the tree. Oh, come on, Harry. Cressy. Nice cold seems to be coming back. Oh dear. Very tiresome how my cold strikes out of nowhere. Of course, the Canadian government are going to be perfectly happy to host games in their country. The games are supposed to be for the disabled. They're not supposed to be about Harry and Meghan. They have turned something that should be about the conquest of disability through sheer willpower and hope and faith. They have turned it into a dog and pony show called the Meghan and Harry show. But let us see what happens. You know, they say a week is a long time in politics. And I'm hearing very interesting things about the state of Harry and Meghan's marriage. Yes, very interesting things. I can't say exactly what right yet, because it's too fresh, but really interesting things. And they come from royalty. Tandy Smith says, is there a reason the royal family didn't do a background check on Meghan? Tandy Smith, they did do a background check on Meghan. Everybody knows everything there is to know about Meghan. It's been buried because Harry insisted on marrying her. Harry wasn't interested in anything except his vision of the perfect evocation of his mother. Remember, Oedipus needs to marry Mummy, and Oedipus has married Mummy. The only problem is Mummy's been dead since 1997, and Mummy Markle too bears only the most superficial resemblance to actual Mummy. Mummy number 2 has a very interesting background, and don't for a second think practically everybody in the press and in royal and aristocratic circles don't know about it. Because I've got news for you. We all know about it. Lynn Sebastian says, Lady Colin Campbell, love your videos and info, so spot on. Thank you very much. Also love seeing the whuppies, adorable. I was tempted to bring them this afternoon to show them again, but I have to tell you they're too heavy, and since I'm in less pain today, I thought I really don't want to rock my boat. So they're safely tucked away. They actually, when I left them, they were they have burrowed underneath the sofa in my bathroom. There's a sofa and they burrow in through the back of it and they're underneath the sofa, which is fine. It makes them happy. What do I care? There will have to be tweaking when they've left, but in the meantime, one has to live and let live. I'm Canadian and have just seen a very British scandal on Amazon Prime here. Was the Duke of Argyll and the Duchess really that brutal to each other? I just got the feeling that Ian was always looking for an income. Did the Argylls not have wealth, or was it just in the land? I felt kind of sorry for them both, that they just couldn't find any happiness together, and just sort of used people. I'll answer it, and one or two people have said they'd like me to do a whole programme on a very British scandal and my parents-in-law. If you want, I'll do a more extensive thing than what I'm about to do. But I wouldn't do a whole programme. I think the situation doesn't warrant it. And I think it would be of only interest to certain people and would not be of interest to others. And I don't want to saddle my viewers with things that are not of general interest to them. But to those of you who don't know, a very British scandal has just aired in the United States. It's a 3-part television series by, I think it's the BBC. It's on my father-in-law and my stepmother-in-law's divorce. And my father-in-law, according to his daughter, was very dark, which was her way of saying malevolent and dreadful and evil. He was always only interested in money. I can go into much more details if you want to know. He was always looking for a woman to support him, and it wasn't him alone. Margaret was a much nicer person. She was very spoilt. She was very vain. She was very self-centered, but she was good-hearted. And he was charming. I didn't know him. I never met him. But my ex-husband used to say he was the most charming man he'd ever met, and so did several of Big Ian's friends. And Margaret said he was very charming. That doesn't mean he was nice. On the contrary, he wasn't. Did the Argylls have wealth? Or was it in the land? One of the previous dukes tied up the estate, so it was entailed upon the title and it couldn't be touched, because Big Ian was a notorious rake, and the previous Duke, Neil Dermid, knew that he was never going to marry, he wasn't going to have children, and that Ian would succeed to the dukedom. And he also knew that Ian was a rake. So anything that wasn't nailed down, he nailed down. So Ian inherited Inverera, which it has to be said Neil Dermid had let run to rack and ruin. He inherited, I think it was over 100,000 acres of land. I don't remember how much, but quite a lot. The castle was absolutely stuffed with the most wonderful furniture, Beauvais tapestries, pictures, etc. But my father-in-law's income from the estate till he died was £1,000 per annum. I've got the papers here somewhere. Filed away. When he died, he left £1,000. His income from the Argyll estate was £1,000 per annum. Now, £1,000 per annum in the 1930s was a lot more than it is now, but even then it wasn't enough to sustain anybody in a grand lifestyle. So he married for money. He married 3 of the 4 women he married totally for money. And the 4th, she didn't have that much money, but she set out to get him. She got him. And as he used to say, he married the bet, because he'd had an affair with her mother, and he bet her mother that she couldn't get a certain gay guy into bed, and she did on one occasion. And his 4th wife was the product, he thought possibly, of the bet, but maybe not, because there was someone else around the whole time, both before and after that occasion, and it was him. So, interesting. I can go into it in greater detail if you'd like, but I don't think I'll tax anybody at this point. And the final question is, Kelly says, I think Harry is true to his word in making sure that the Queen has the right people around her. He has clearly deemed himself as not part of the right people and removed himself all the way to Montecito. What a considerate lad! And helpfully removed Meghan along the way as well. Kelly, thanks for that. Very witty, very entertaining, apposite, apposite, and so true, isn't it? Because, fortunately though, we can all sleep at night, because not only has Harry made sure that the Queen has the right sort of people around her that he and Meghan approve of, but that they are not around her. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening to this. If you have enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, keep the questions coming in, because this can't be done without you. God bless and goodbye.